Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to today's webinar on the HMRC Secure Mailbox in Sage 50 Payroll. My name's Alice and I'll be delivering today's webinar and showing the demonstrations as well. Today's webinar is also one of the webinars in our April Spring Clean badge. So we are running a series of webinars throughout April where you can earn our free digital badge. So more information at the end of today's session. So I'll begin with how to set up the mailbox and I'll demonstrate how to check for notifications coming through and how you can apply any changes or notices that you might receive. We'll then look at the other side of the mailbox, so how to send P46 car forms directly at HMRC, and finish with some top tips as well. And we should hopefully have time at the end of the webinar just to get those last answers out to your questions as well. Now, before I do get started on the content, I do just want to launch a poll. We've got this question here. So how do you currently receive tax code notices from HMRC? So is that via the IR Secure Mailbox in Sage 50 Payroll? Is that the HMRC PAYE online service? Paper notices in the post, or don't know/other? So if you just select your answer, I will share the results at the end as well, just to get a little bit of insight there. Fab, I'll just close that now and share those results. So 38% of you actually do use the mailbox in Sage 50 Payroll, so you already use it. Hopefully you can learn something new in today's webinar. 28% use the PAYE online service, 30% use paper notices in the post, and 4% or don't know/other. So yeah, that's interesting to see. Let me just close that down and we'll move on to that next slide. So our first section then is setting up the HMRC Secure Mailbox and a little bit about it as well. So it's an integrated mailbox within Sage 50 Payroll that connects to your HMRC online service or gateway. It'll retrieve notices directly from HMRC, such as student loan notices or tax code notices as well. And in the mailbox within Payroll, you've got the option to then apply these notices to the relevant employees. So there's no need to do that manually in the record or individually for everyone. So ultimately, it will save you some time and save paper too, compared to getting them in the post, for example. So to use it, you will have to have electronic notifications enabled. So I'll touch back on that in a moment, but you must also know your user ID and password for HMRC's PAYE online service. Now don't worry if you don't immediately know what these are, as they should already be in your programme, ready for when you submit your FPS and other e-submissions as well. Those of you who are still receiving post notifications, so paper ones from HMRC, you will need to enable electronic notifications if you'd like to use the mailbox. And if you're unsure how to do this, I have put the steps on the slide here. So that involves logging into your HMRC online gateway and amending your notice preferences. So doing these steps means that you can get those notices electronically instead of in the post. And there is a little bit more information just linked there at the bottom of the slide. So I'd like to move on to actually setting up the mailbox, which is basically just checking that your e-submission settings in the programme are up to date. So these settings include various company details, as well as that user ID and password. And it's also where you record contact details and some other configuration settings as well. So I will just turn off my camera, we'll go to Payroll and I'll show you these settings. So I'm logged in with my manager login, which has full access to the company and the e-submissions settings. And I'll find those in the e-submissions section, and it's just the first task in the list there in the top left. So in here we've got two tabs, settings and contact details. In settings, we can see the company name, we can see the tax district and reference number, and that user ID and password. And as I mentioned, if you already submit FPSs and EPSs, these settings are correct, so you can just leave these alone. But do be aware, if you do change your password to the Government Gateway Online, you will need to come and manually amend this in the e-submission settings too. So if you change your login online, you will also need to change that here, as that's what kind of links it up. Now, in terms of configuration settings in here, on the left we do have a tick box asking if you'd like the mailbox to check for new messages when it's opening. This will make sense soon, so once I've showed you the mailbox, but this setting means that when you open it up, it will automatically refresh and see if there's anything new to pull through. So it'll save you that extra little bit of time compared to refreshing it yourself and waiting for those notices. And these notices do come directly from the HMRC online service, which is why you need these two pieces of information here. So the user ID and password, they need to be correct in order to link it up. On the right, you'll also see this tick box here to clear the P46 car flag once the form has been submitted to HMRC. So we will cover this a little bit later in the webinar, but it basically just clears a flag in an employee's record. And then just below, there is one last tick box, not really too directly related to the mailbox, but this is just preference, whether you'd like the FPS checklist to show when you're submitting a full payment submission. So it's mainly these two tick boxes here. And again, it's totally preference if you want them ticked or not. We then have the contact details tab. So in here, you've got to make sure that your contact details are all up to date. And if you submit as an agent, you'll just tick this box here and of course enter in those contact details. And those are your e-submission settings. So that is it really for the setup of the mailbox, just making sure that those contact details are up to date, any configuration settings that you want are ticked, and then of course the user ID and password is correct as well. So remember, if you do change that, you will need to change it in the settings too. And if you do want the mailbox to automatically check for new messages when you open it, do just remember to select that left tick box. So now that the mailbox is set up how we'd like, and we've checked the details in the settings, we can now check for any notices and apply them directly to the relevant employees. So I've got a list of some of the main notices that you might receive in the mailbox, starting with the P6 and P6B. Now this is notice of a change in an employee's tax code and also information on their previous pay and tax. These are typically received mid-tax year. So sometimes if you've taken on a new employee partway through the year who didn't have a P45 from the previous employer, for example. There's then the P9 notice, which are seasonal, and they do tend to be sent ready to take effect from the beginning of a tax year. So often they're received in February or March, ready for April. And if you attended our Payroll year-end webinars, you'll hopefully remember either me or Duncan showing you how to apply P9s to get ready for the new tax year. But don't worry, if you didn't attend or you can't remember, I will also be showing you that today. Then we've got SL1 and PGL1 notices, which are notification to start a student loan or postgraduate loan. And SL2 or PGL2 notices, which are to stop a student loan or postgraduate loan deduction. There's also national insurance verification requests and notices. So these are responses from HMRC regarding NI number verification requests, or sometimes after you've done a full payment submission. So these will correct or confirm NI number information. So HMRC will check that the NI is present and correct and respond with an appropriate response. So they're just a few of the common examples of forms that you might receive in the HMRC secure mailbox. And you would then be able to apply these directly to the employee's records using the mailbox. So I'd like to now demonstrate how this process works. I'll just turn my camera back off and bring up Payroll. And I'm just going to close these e-submission settings. So you'll find the IR Secure mailbox either in the e-submission tasks, you just see that as the second option in the tasks, or it's actually got its own step on the process map as well. So if you are a process map user, you can see the IR Secure mailbox there has its own step. And ideally, you would check for these notices and get any changes applied before you go ahead and enter the payments for your employees. So this means that if there has been any changes, they're made before the employee's pay is calculated, so tax and other deductions are correct. So before enter payments. So in this demonstration, I'll be showing you how to apply a few of these notices so you can get a good understanding of how they're applied. And I'll be starting at the beginning of the tax year. So my payroll's monthly, and I'll be showing you some notices in months 1 and 2. So I've just opened up the mailbox, and if you did tick the box in the e-submission settings to check for new mail automatically, that will automatically pull through anything that's been received. If you didn't tick that box though, like me, what you would just need to do is click on new mail in the top left, and that would pull through the new notices. Now I'm using a simulation of the mailbox, but you would see a loading bar going across as these notices are picked up and downloaded. As you can see, I've received 3 P9 notices and also an SL1 notice too, so the start of a student loan for one of my employees. You can view the details of any notices by selecting it and just clicking open at the top. This would then bring up information so we can see this particular notice is for employee number 2. I can see the tax code that HMRC are requesting I use for them, and also the effective from date of this tax code change. So if I wanted to apply an individual notice, I could do that in here by just clicking apply. And I can also print these details out as well. Now, if you've got multiple notices, like me, which is probably most likely, you can actually instead use the clear and swap icons just here to select them all, which would then mean you can open them all and apply them all at the same time as well. So that was the clear and swap icons just in the top right there. You could also select the first notice, hold Shift on your keyboard and select the last one, which would select everything in between. Or alternatively, hold Control on your keyboard and select each notice to highlight them. So a few options of how to select them all, but once they have been, you can open them up. You can view all 3 notices information there, so I can see each tax code change. They've all got the same effective from date, which is quite common with P9s. And again, I can print those there. And then to apply them, I'm just going to click apply in the bottom right. I'll see this message, so I can click yes to confirm I want to apply those changes. And we can see they've been applied, and the status on the right is success. So they've been successfully applied. So this means they've been applied and they're ready to take effect from that effective from date, which is of course the 6th of April. So this does mean that you can actually apply notices in advance. So in my case, I received these in February. I could actually apply them early just to get prepared, and Sage 50 Payroll knows that they aren't effective until that effective from date. So you can get organised that way as well. So with those P9s applied, I'll just close this window. And although they have been applied, we can still see them in the mailbox. So in order to refresh this, I can close and reopen the mailbox, and those notices would then disappear as they've been applied. But before I do that, I will also apply the student loan notice I've received. So again, I'll highlight this. I'll use the open icon here, and I can see this particular notice is for employee number 10. It's a start date for a student loan, and it's plan type 1. And I can apply this at the bottom, confirm those changes, and again, that's been successful. So again, that is still there despite the fact it's been applied. So what I'm going to do is just close and reopen the mailbox there just to refresh that. Perfect, so they're now gone. Now, if you did want to see any of the notices that you've applied, or maybe you wanted to print the details and you'd forgotten to, there is an audit trail of these changes, so any applied mail, and that's actually in the e-submissions log. So I'm just going to open that up, and this is showing all of the e-submissions that have been sent, so your FPSs, EPSs. We're actually looking for the other tab at the top, so applied mail. And we can see all of the different notices that have been applied for the employees. We can see the type of notice on the left and the applied date as well. So if you did want to check anything that's been applied, or again print that off, you do have that option. So now let's just go to the employees' records who had made changes to. So I'm going to highlight them. and I'm just going to open up their records. So the first three was tax code changes. So I'm going to go to employment and click on the little plus next to the tax code, and I can see that's queued up there. And because it's past the 6th of April, my process date, that is in use as well. So that's automatically pulled through and made the change in the employee's record. And same with employee number 5. And we'll just check employee number 6 as well, and we can see that tax code change there. Now the last employee, that was the student loan information. So it's still on the employment tab in the record. I'm just going to click on student and postgraduate loans, and I can see it's brought through that information and populated the student loan information there. And it's plan type 1 starting on the 6th of April 2024. So these notices were applied in the mailbox and they've automatically changed in the employee's records. So it is a nice quick process. And now that I've applied those changes, I'm actually ready to go ahead and process my payroll. So normally I would enter payments, I would do my pre-update reports, etc. But for today, let's pretend I've done all that, and I'm going to skip ahead to update the records for month 1. So again, my process date's the 30th of April, but of course yours might be different. So that's the update records wizard. Always take a backup at this point as well, just to make sure that you've got a pre-update backup. So I'm going to call this month 1 pre-update 2024. And just to finish that backup, I'll click next and finish. And then I'm going to work through the update records wizard. Now, with it being the first period in the new tax year as well, you will likely get a few more reminders when you're going through your payroll process, just to remind you of things like tax codes, the week 1, month 1 flags, etc. So do take notice of those. And then I'll click through update records. So with the records updated, I would now normally move on to my FPS and things. But again, we'll pretend I've done that. And I'm going to move on to month 2 just to look at some other notices that you may receive in the mailbox. So I'll go ahead and change my process date to month 2, which for me is the 31st of May. And I'm just going to go back to the mailbox, which again is in e-submissions. Just give that a moment there and click on IR Secure Mailbox. So remember, you do need to click on New Mail if you haven't ticked that box to automatically refresh the mailbox. So I'll click on that and I can actually see I've got 2 new notices. So I've got a P6 for one of my employees and I've got an SL2, which is a stop notice for a student loan. So I'll start with the P6. I'll highlight this and I'll open that up using this icon. We can see that's for one of my newer employees. So it's got there the tax code HMRC are wanting to use for them, and also information on the previous pay and previous tax, and the effective from date, which is the 6th of May 2024. So that's the main difference between a P9 and a P6, that the P6 is mid-year. So again, I'll apply this, confirm those changes, and see that that's been a success. And same again with the SL2. I'll highlight this, open it up, and we can see it's for employee number 1 with a stop date for their student loan of the 1st of May 2024. So I'll apply this and confirm it, and then that's been a success. And again, you can find that information of those applied notices in the e-submissions log. And remember, because they are still showing, just close and reopen the mailbox to refresh that there. So I will just show you those changes in the employees' records before we move on to that next section. So employee number 1, that was the student loan stop notice. So we'll go to employment, student and postgraduate loans, and I can see that end date is populated for them. And for my new employee, it was the tax code. So we can see that's changed there. So let's bring back the slides have a little bit of a recap of what we did there as well. So we checked for new notices by opening up the mailbox, and if we hadn't specified for it to refresh automatically, just click on New Mail for that to come through. We could see the different types of notices laid out in folders on the left, and we learned how to select multiple notices, either using clear and swap, shift or control on your keyboard, which would then mean you can open them all up and apply them all at once as well. Once they've been applied, and you've seen they've been successful, you can see an audit trail of those notices applied as well in the e-submissions log. So open them up and apply them there. So that is the main use of the mailbox. So it's mostly used to retrieve and apply notices, but it does also have a secondary use, which is the ability to submit a P46 car form. So this is for when a new car is provided for an employee or withdrawn or changed, and this form is required if you still use the P11D process to report expenses and benefits to HMRC. If you payroll the benefit in kind, you don't need to send a P46 car form. Instead, those details are sent through on the FPS. So I'm going to go straight back to payroll, and I would like to show you how to submit a P46 car form. So I'm first of all going to create a car record in one of my employees' records. So we'll go employee number 1. I'll create that car record in the Cars and Fuel tab, and then I'll show you how to submit that P46 car form. So I'm going to click on New Car just at the bottom here. This will bring up the New Car wizard, and it's just a case of working through this and popping in the information. So forgive me if this is not all totally accurate, just for the purposes of the webinar, of course. And I'm not a car expert by any means. So enter that information, just click next through the wizard, pop in a list price and the date the car was first made available. So that was this tax year. And I'll click next and finish to create that car record. So we see that information now populated on this tab. So this will allow you to work out the Class 1 national insurance in the following tax year. So because this car is new in this tax year, you can see it's not showing any Class 1 national insurance just yet. It does, however, create a P46 car form for us. So if we click on this button, P46 car, just at the bottom, we can see it's automatically filled in this form for us, and tick the box here to see P46 car is required. So that is ticked. That's important to be ticked to be able to submit the form to HMRC. And of course, check over this form, and then we'll save the record. And I just want to show you how to submit that through the mailbox. So e-submissions tasks, IR secure mailbox. And we can see there is a section called HMRC submissions on the left. I'll click on the little drop down and I can see P46 car. So that has the car record and the P46 form there that we've just created. And the submission deadline for these is every quarter. So I can select it in here and then click submit at the bottom and work through this internet submission to send the form across to HMRC. So check the company details, click submit, and that is sending that information to HMRC. So much quicker than printing it out and posting it to them. In a matter of seconds, we can see that it's been successful and gone across to HMRC. We can also see it in the submitted items section. So now that it's been submitted, we can see that there. So when we set up the mailbox, let me just go back to those settings. If we'd ticked this box, this would automatically clear the flag in the employee's record for the P46 car form. Because we haven't ticked this box in the settings, what we'll now have to do is just go back into the employee's record and manually clear that flag. So it's in the Cars and Fuel again, P46 car, and we just need to make sure that now we've submitted that form to HMRC, we untick that box. So totally preference whether you have that ticked in the settings or not, but either way, just make sure that's unticked afterwards. So that was submitting a P46 car form. Just have a little bit of a recap of what we did. So we created a new car record by going into the Cars and Fuel tab. This then created a P46 car form which we could check over, make sure that little tick box at the top was ticked, and then go to the mailbox to submit this form to HMRC. And that was in the HMRC submissions section on the left. So I'd select the P46 form and just click submit at the bottom. And once it is submitted, it'll just go to the submitted items section as well. And then just remember after that, if the setting wasn't ticked to clear the flag in the record, go back to the employee's record, to Cars and Fuel, and then click P46 at the bottom and untick that tick box again. So that was just a little bit of an insight on the P46 car form. And that has brought us to the last section of the webinar, which is some top tips that we've put together. So we've got 4 top tips here. A few of them we've kind of demonstrated, but definitely take a note of these. So top tip number 1, in the mailbox you can select multiple notices and apply them all at the same time. And a couple of options for this. So you can clear and swap using the icons in the mailbox, or you can hold Control and click to select individual notices, or you can hold Shift on your keyboard and click the first and last notice in the list to select everything in between. Open them all at once and apply them all at once as well. And if you do need to delete notices, you also can do that in the same way. So select them using those options and delete them. Top tip number 2, so stay organised and apply notices as you receive them. So even if they aren't effective for a few months' time, you are able to apply the notices as you receive them, and Payroll will automatically update the employee as necessary when the effective from date comes around. So for example, if you received P9 notices in February, you can apply them then, and Payroll knows that they're not going to be effective until April. Top tip number 3, so if notices are showing after being applied or deleted, close and reopen the IR Secure mailbox, which refreshes it and removes any applied and deleted notices. And that leads us on to top tip number 4. You can check applied mail in your e-submissions log to view any notices which have already been applied, and of course view the details of those and print off that log if you do wish. So that's 4 top tips that we've put together for you all. And that does bring us to the end of the main webinar content. So before we do wrap things up, I would like to go through a little bit of further support with you all and just talk a little bit more about that Payroll Spring Clean badge, which I mentioned at the beginning. So we are running a few dates for each of the topics on the screen. And if you attend at least 3 out of 5 live webinars, you'll earn a free digital badge. So if you are interested in more webinars, we've still got dates available for online payslips, report favourites and selections, and another session on the secure mailbox as well. So click register now to read a little bit more about what we're going to cover in them, and of course get registered for the webinars. You can also go to sage.co.uk/webinars for this. We've then got the Sage Help Centre. So all of the articles and things that I've linked on the slides today are from the Help Centre. But here you can search the knowledge base for support guides, there's recordings of webinars, there's demonstration videos as well, and should you need to get in touch, you can also contact the experts. There's also Sage University, so here you can set up a free account and access totally free e-learning, bite-sized learning, and as well as earning product certification too. So if you are fairly new to a certain product or just want to expand your knowledge, that is a great way to do so. You can do that on Sage 50 Payroll and other Sage products too. Hi everyone, I can see we've answered most of those questions now, so thank you for keeping Duncan and Calvin nice and busy behind the scenes. Hopefully we've managed to work through most of them, so remember if you do want to keep any of those questions or answers, just to copy and paste those into something like a Word document, and remember to keep an eye on your inbox as well for a recording of the webinar coming through to you. So I'll wrap things up now. I'm going to end the webinar. Thank you so much for your time this morning and enjoy the rest of your day.